Right, you got the rack out. Probably getting out was the hardest part. You've got 3 bolts holding the motor, 2 on the top and 1 at the bottom. Other than that, you have similar bolts all around the casing here, yeah, which you need to undo. With its TX35, just undo the bolts. I wouldn't undo the motor first, but probably it doesn't matter. So if we undo this, if you're gonna undo this first, then you're just gonna see how the belt sits on the motor, and you're gonna have point of reference where the belt needs to be. The bolt on this side is quite tight. You just need to use something shorter because the space is quite narrow. Once you get it loose, they shouldn't be seized. And at this stage doesn't matter if the rack center or not, because obviously you're gonna put it out of whack as you move things around. So after you reassemble it, you can center the rack. Given when you removed it, your steering wheel was centered. Yeah, that's 3 bolts on top. Then we're going with 2 bolts at the bottom. Right, I've opened this rack before, so this is not gonna be extremely tight, yeah. But what you might need to do is take a screwdriver again, make sure, you know, be careful not to damage anything, and just pry it a little bit in several locations, yeah. You do have a seal sitting here, which can be quite seized, yeah. But as you can see, once it's opening, what you can do is actually move the pinion, and that's gonna push the entire thing out, yeah, because obviously those parts are moving on this rod, yeah. So just by doing this, you're gonna save yourself a little bit of effort, yeah. Again, you're gonna center the rack after you're done, so that should be a big deal. So as you open it, you can give yourself a bit of space, and then you will see roughly where this belt sits, yeah. This might sit, probably should sit somewhere in the middle. Yeah, pretty much that gives you reference. To remove the motor, you can undo the 3 bolts. You will see this belt's quite tight. If you were to remove it without undoing the bolts, that's not quite possible. Once you remove the bolts, what's gonna happen? That's gonna give you a little bit of a wiggle room to actually maneuver the motor, yeah, and that's how you can actually slide it in. If I remove those bolts and just do the whole thing, you see, as now I do on the bolts, you can see how tight it is, yeah. So also as you put it back, you just want to make sure it sits properly. That's why, you know, if someone would tell me they can actually remove the motor and position it back without opening the rack, this is extremely unlikely, and you will see why shortly. There you go. And as you remove the motor, I'm not sure what's the state of the rack you will open. There might be a little bit of grease on the rod itself, yeah. So once you got the motor out, be careful with the belt, don't let it drop onto the rod, because then it's gonna get full of grease, which might obviously affect performance later on. But once you got the last bolt out, the motor should slide out. Yeah, and again, what I said, the belt, just make sure it doesn't, you know, drop onto the grease. Yeah, the belt itself, as long as you don't remove this part, it's got the teeth on the belt are actually not, you know, horizontal, they're under slight angle. Yeah, but you do want to make sure it sits on the gear. Yeah, again, you can imagine if you remove the motor without removing the rack, as you remove the motor, this belt will slack, and what's gonna happen, actually can come off this gear. Yeah, and then you might be in the world of trouble. That's why removing the rack is way smarter way to go. So this still dropped, but yeah, but obviously you want to make sure as you put it in, that seal rests against the metal. And then if I were to install a different motor, if you slide it under an angle, oh, there you go. If you slide under an angle, that's gonna give you enough room, yeah, to get the belt onto the motor. Yeah, as it's on, you know, on the angle, yeah, you can put your bolts back in. Yeah, I'll put all three of them. As you have little of a wiggle room before it's tight, you see it's already quite tight. Yeah, but it gives you a chance to wiggle the motor back and push the belt where it's supposed to be. Yeah, so you just have any point of reference was in the center, and as I see it's in the center, I can tighten up the bolts. Yeah. There we go. You can move the gear, see if it looks good. Yeah. Oh, so I'll put this in the same motor back, but you know, if you're using a replacement motor, it should be identical. These bolts are quite soft. Yeah, I've seen people from Range Rover Evoque complaining that they snap and so on. That's why you see the wrench I'm using is quite small, so I wouldn't over tighten them with something big. Yeah, because they are, I think, aluminium, so I would not want to snap them, because I think they're quite expensive to get, and again that will delay entire process. Yeah, so once you get that motor in, make it quite tight, but again, small wrench. Now motor's back in, this moves, and I see what happens as the motor is plugged into power. It just pulls this part. Obviously that's locked, that's gonna push the bar left or right. Yeah, with that assistance. What you need to be mind of, there could be a little bit of a slack here on this part. Yeah, so you want to make sure as you close it, ensure not closing it under an angle. Yeah, or give it slack, because you know, if you see that slack, it causes the belt to drop a bit. Yeah, that's why just make sure it sits in the center. Yeah, and you want to make sure as you close it, how you close it, you can use the pinion to push it back the same way as you've opened it. Yeah, just make sure it's super straight. Yeah, don't let that slack twist the motor, twist the belt. There we go. Yeah, so just turn the pinion, you close it, and now the most important part. Yeah, I would say stop here. And now you want to get your bolts and actually close it with the bolts. Yeah, the reason for that is you saw that little wiggle room. There's a tiny bit of slack in there, and you do want to tighten with the bolts so the entire gear gets pushed inside. Yeah, if you're not gonna do that, there's gonna be a little bit of movement inside. Yeah, which is gonna cause extremely frustrating knocking sound after you're gonna assemble the rack. Yeah, so what I would do, like if you see that blue seal, just start tightening it. There we go. So I'll do 2 bolts on the top. There you go, we don't want to go all the way on one side. Now flip it onto the other side. Get 1 bolt in the center. Yeah, so you have a gear sitting here, and if you tighten with the bolts, instead of just close it and then tighten it, that pushes the entire gear inside, which rests against a plastic seal, yeah, and then everything gets nice and tight. There we go. I'm not going to do it all the way because I want to do it evenly on all the sides. There we go. Go. Again, same tightness as the motor. Now, if I were you, what I would give it a test. So pretty much with a vise or anything, you can hold your rack in, get in the vise. You can do it on the table, or whatever means you've got of holding it in place, and give it a spin. This motor's busted, is making this weird humming sound, yeah, but ideally if the motor is not busted, it should be silent, and as you spin you should not hear anything, no knocking, no weird sounds coming from the rack, yeah, and that means good assembly. Yeah. And once you have in the vise, give it a spin a few times. If I were you, I would go all the way to one side. You're gonna see this side coming out. Fantastic opportunity to get some grease in. Yeah, I use like a bearing grease. That was a recommendation from a friend of mine, which worked well. So you can go all the way to the other side. Again, don't go too crazy on the grease, because apparently you can over grease these things. Yeah, but since you're here, you can go all the way this way and also get grease on this side. Yeah, do it several times. Like I said, I would do it when I had problems and I had a bit of knocking to the poor assembly. I would spin it very quickly, and then even if you hold your hand, you can feel if something's not right. Yeah, if there's any movement, little knocks or so on. Yeah, but as long as you assemble it this way, like I said, tighten with the bolts, don't close it and then put the bolts, everything should be fine. Again, this motor's busted, you hear that weird sound, but it should be nice and smooth. In terms of resistance, you should not be able to turn it with your hand. Yeah, if you can turn with your hand, yeah, it means you might have a little bit of a slack, which is a different problem. Same if you cannot move it too hard, let me know. That can be also a different issue, because you can adjust these racks. Yeah. But yeah, once you have in the vise, if you do have a vise, also great opportunity then to center it, yeah, in a nice stable position. Yeah, and that should be it. That's rack assembled and job done.